Hello, I'm Solalar, and welcome to another blog. Let's see, still thinking of the title, but I think we will go with role playing the hard way. There we go. Now, the last video I've made of just me talking. What was the video called? What is 4D roleplay? Up in my game. I've laid down the premise for 4D roleplaying that we've got from Mr. Max. And since then, I've done a bunch more research and found a 28mm RPG who was gracious enough to do a training session with me, do 4D role playing, and just try to stay in character the whole time. We'll talk about that too later. So, let's go to the main topic. What is role playing the hard way? Let's jump to that immediately. I got this cam set up right here. Yes, I like this. On Drive-Thru RPG, you can find it from a guy called Johnner. He's on YouTube as well. I will link to the Drive-Thru RPG page where you can get how to roleplay the hard way. It puts it up for free, so you can get it. Costs you nothing. Read it through, 50 pages, and I will say it's quite a light read. It's basically a pamphlet with more details. And that's what we are going to talk about. How to roleplay the hard way by Shonner Press. Now, I would say this book is important because How to Roleplay the Hard Way is the inspiration for 4D roleplaying. They are directly linked together to the boys who've started trying to create a 4D role-playing session all the way through. So it's very important for me to understand 4D role-playing, that I read the book and inform myself. Why is this important? Well, you don't want to make any assumptions that are completely wrong and already debunked, right? You want to make sure if you want to understand something, what were their intent? And their intent is to roleplay the hard way, basically, like the book says. Because if it was easy, you wouldn't have to train for it. You can just do it. It's hard in the case of it takes mental effort to keep yourself in character and not pull yourself out with the easy way out and just asking the guy across the table what's happening. So let's go to what it says here. Who is the book for? I find this a very important point. People who are roleplay curious. Maybe they are tired of more gamey feel than rolling dice presents. To some, roleplaying a character genuinely sounds a lot more interesting to try and learn more about. Existing players who want to advance their role-playing level or vet the right players for their next game session will find the hard way much more rewarding. Yeah, that's what it's about. To give the reader a running head start on role-playing and being able to teach other serious players to roleplay that they wish to invite their games. Now, I find this very, very important. Let's see if, yeah, there we go. I find this very important. Like, what are we trying to solve with 4D roleplaying, with roleplaying the hard way? What we are trying to solve is actually wanting to roleplay in the game, to be your character, and to not get pulled out all the time with rules talk, with hand me the pizza over, with the crunchy noises of snacking around. So, which is like the beer and pretzel approach that many players do. You know, playing RPGs to many is a social activity. It's a board game activity. You put down minis, you put down dice, you write down numbers, you defeat monsters. But what it's trying to solve is What if I actually want to roleplay and stay roleplaying? This is what the book is for. And it's totally possible that you don't want that. And that's the common denominator to like what genre says. Yeah, then you're the 99%. You already get what you want. You want to focus on rules. You want to focus on rolling dice, on working down the hit points of monsters. That's cool. Like you can do that, but then you're not role playing. And I guess that's the divisive part that people may say, "Hey, what do you mean I'm not role playing?" It means that the focus of the game is not the role playing aspect of the game. A lot of the players, and I would say myself too, we focus on the. I'm double checking if you can even hear me. Yes, we focus on the board game aspect. And I've had many sessions where I count my spells. I want to make sure that I have the right tools for the right challenge. But it means that now that I'm in this situation, I'm thinking about rules and how to use them to win the game. And I'm not thinking about role playing my character and staying in character what my character sees. Because I'm too busy thinking about rules. And some people are better at handling both at the same time. And other players are completely overwhelmed. Especially if you're a new player. Before you can even roleplay, you have to learn how the whole system works. It's a lot of work and stops new role players dead in their tracks. They either start liking the board game aspect, you know, and let the role playing slide as less important, which they can if they want, but I don't really enjoy playing with players who want to win the game when I want to tell a story with the players on the table. Now that's another trigger word. Well, I said it. So when I want to explore the adventure with the other characters at the table, right? And I want to roleplay out what happens. So I wrote down some notes so I'm not too much rambling. Alright. Yeah. What is it not trying to do? There we go. Yeah, what's the book not trying to do? We are not trying to play board games or war games. Like you might play war games, you might play Warhammer 40k. That's totally fine. You're playing D&D like a board game. You set up the minis, you roll the dice, you move the minis around. We go in initiative order. That's fine too. But yes, yeah, I think I explained it. I explained it before. Exactly what I meant. When you're focused on the rules and on winning the fights, you're not role playing in that moment because you're busy, right? You're busy moving around and fighting instead of seeing what your character sees. All right. So, social contracts. That's right, social contracts. The next point. Let's hop over to the book again. I got a PDF right here. This is my version. You can get your own. And I'd love to go to I like this one, the preface hard. Acronym: Honest and Reactive Dialogue. The book was written because to solve the problem of not constantly explaining himself and being able to point to a book of like what he would like in a role-playing game. And the social contract. Let's read this one together. What goes in it? Sign here, please. What exactly is a social contract? Well, here's an old one before the time. Players must not fear it. It's just a social contract. This is one of many. Player will devise the contracts for various games, groups, and roleplay sessions. It's essential to have one of these. Now, what is in here? We can have a closer look. Now this one is provided by if you're playing online with a camera. Make sure that you have a good setup, better internet connection with camera and mic. No camera phones and phone apps, touchpads. Like make sure that it's stable and that we can see your face and it's not constantly shaking. That your face is clear and visible like we have right here with my setup. The headphones must to prevent echo, so it's not bouncing off different echoes. I think this is all understandable. Like no smoke detectors, no food. Now those are points to stop distractions from the role-playing game, right? This is so that you can stay focused. No phone use, texting or web browsing during the game, also to eliminate distractions. No chat room use, private messagings in Hangouts. The same points. Players don't ask the GM questions. Each player narrates what their character is doing. GM states when the die rolls are required. The players narrate their successes while the GM narrates player failure. All talking as well as asking is done in character. The players ask the players. The players ask the NPCs that the Dungeon Master plays. And NPCs speak to the players to relay or answer questions. No initiative, no combat rounds. Combat is close to real time as possible. Action is cinematic style. Characters are allowed to move at the speed of the player's narration. No narration means no action taken by the player's character. They are sitting or standing. When a character dies, the player leaves the hangout and game until they have created a new character to return to the game with. Players must have their character sheets with them, always. Now, I'm gonna leave this up so we can talk about it a little bit. So, what is the purpose of the social contract? I find this one quite easy to answer. You do a social contract with your players so that you're all on the same page. You all want to achieve the same goal. We're here to play a role-playing game, to stay in character, to have fun. But I liked how Shauna put it. Fun is step zero. Like you've already agreed to play a game, so having fun, you will always have fun. That is a given, no matter what you do. What are you gonna do? Go meet your friends and not have fun? That sounds like you should stop doing that immediately. The rules are here to set expectations of what you want to achieve. Now you can say as a GM, man, those are my rules. I would really like to try that. And then you bring it to your players and talk with them about it. Give them a chance to see the terms. Like, your player might say, like, what do you mean no food? What if I'm hungry? Sure, you can be hungry. If you play 6-hour sessions, you will get hungry. So you better make sure that you either shorten the time for the actual game, or you might be able to cut it in half, like have a half time where you will actually do some eating and play afterward. All of that stuff serves, these rules serve to achieve role-playing, to stay in character for as long as possible. The goal to stay in character and roleplay the whole session. Right? That is what we are trying to achieve with role-playing the hard way with 4D role-playing. Now, let's go over some of the bigger ones that I have big difficulties with. Players don't ask the GM questions. Now, that's a hard one, because if you've played a role-playing game, that's the first thing we learn to do, because you sit at the table, the GM describes the scene, and you're immediately confused because you don't understand what he's saying. And then you go like, wait, hold on. How big is the ceiling? And the GM says, well, the ceiling is 20 foot high. But you can also say, because you are confused, maybe you want an answer. I look up at the ceiling and determine how tall it is. If our giant friend can squeeze through here. Now you have asked the same question, but one of them you ask the player on the other side of the table, and the other one you are in the game and looking around. You're interacting with where you are, with the dungeon, with the room, with the house. You're interacting with the game. You're role playing, and it's not hard, but it's hard to keep in mind and actually act upon it. And now the GM can answer. You look up and see it appears to be 20 foot tall. The players narrate their successes while the GM narrates PC failures. This is... I like this rule. If you're successful at something, show how you're successful at. So you make a roll to hit, and you strike. So you describe. I spear jabs into his sides, and I pull out with trickling blood. I chop his head off, flying through the sky. Yeah, stuff like that. I'm trying to think of more examples, but I'm not that quick. Not that quick on the feats. And GM narrates PC failures. Might be the same thing, like I swing to stab the goblin in the chest, but you rolled low, so the GM narrates. The goblin leaps out of the way, dodging the attack. Simple example, staying inside the world, staying in character. The next point I've addressed before, talking to players, talk to NPCs. Let NPCs answer the questions. And if there's no NPC around, then the DM narrates what you see. You see the jungle before you, you see the damp floors, you see 4 goblinoid creatures approaching the group with shaking clubs above their heads, stuff like that. No initiative might be a hard one, because we are very used to combat rules. I believe no initiative is here to solve the problem of stopping the role-playing and entering board game mode, where now we are using the rule sets to determine who attacks when. Yeah, it's basically out board game portion. If you remove initiative, you let the players decide who acts first. Just narrate the goblins jumping out of the bushes and throw on the the goblins jump out of the bushes and throw their spear at Carla, and I roll. It's a hit, piercing into your shoulder, drawing blood. 3 damage. Bam. Now I stop, look at the players, and let them decide how they move. And if you've been playing for a while, you will get into a rhythm. It will be chaotic at start, but the chaos lowers when you get to know each other and you trust each other more. So the quickest character can go first, or however you determine this. This might be something good to talk about at the beginning, or during looking over the social contract part. Alright, we let the player with the alert feed react first as soon as combat ensues. The other way you can do it is you go the order just around the table. The next one to the left, and then around the table 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 until we are the GM again, who describes all of the goblins doing their actions. This way, we reduce time, we don't have to roll as much, no combat rounds, we let, with no combat rounds, react the world more dynamically, to create a more dynamic battle, to stay in the scene and not be slowed down by this turn-based board game thing like video games. Imagine like, yeah, it's like you play Diablo 2, there's no pause button. You just fight as the hordes of enemies run at you to kill your to kill you, right? There's no pause button. We remove the pause button from the game. Now, this also means that I do something as a GM. I don't say all of the 12 goblins attack Carla at the same time and then I roll 12 times until she's dead. No. I move and do a couple of goblins. If it's a big horde, maybe I do a group. If it's a small group, maybe I do one goblin, and then I give the players a chance to react to the situation. We give each other turns, but we do not call it turn. We just leave those terms and terminology off the table. We bring that up before the game, maybe after the game, maybe when we had a combat and it was confusing. Let's talk about it when the game is over, to clarify what was meant, to help the players understand better what you're trying to achieve with this, and to make the game more dynamic. Action in cinematic style, yeah, to make the moves cool and describe them. This is definitely like, I step forward and attack. That's not very cinematic. Like, what are you attacking with? It doesn't evoke an image in people's mind. Instead you say, I draw my short sword from my back and swing down at a goblin. You're still attacking. It doesn't need much more. It's a sentence or two maybe. That's all you need. We are not talking about elaborative, flowery description. There's still a purpose, and the purpose is to describe your action without using MMO terminology or gaming terminology. You just roleplay, you just describe your character and what you do. And then you roll the appropriate skill, attack roll, attributes that you have in mind. Classic example is the second wind of the fighter in D&D. I take a moment to brace myself, then take a deep breath, rallying my spirits. We can do this, brothers. And you don't need to look at your DM for permission. You just roll your second wind and how many hit points you regenerate. And you say, maybe you say I heal 8 hit points. Or you just write it down. Say 8 hit points and I feel much stronger now. Already narrated that you've healed yourself. Stuff like that can help. Characters are allowed to move at the speed of the player's narration. So I find this one a bit difficult. So we will see how this plays out. What is the speed of the player's narration? I run towards the goblin. Great, you reach the goblin. You've described they're approaching you. And you've seen them because I've described them, and it means that your characters see them. So you run towards them and slash your sword across their chest. Good. Now, do I have to keep track that they're exactly 30 feet away from you or 25 feet away from you because you're a gnome and you're slower than other creatures, or you're a dwarf? Is that important? Not really. It's important if you want to win a board game where the distance makes a difference between an attack or not an attack. But it stops the flow of role-playing. So this is why we don't bother with that. Now, it might be important if you play a short character that I run towards them, knowing that I cannot reach them with my short legs. I draw my hatchet and throw it towards its face. Bam, that's a roll. And depending on if it kills a creature, it might slay it immediately. If it's damaged, you know, you describe that the goblin ducked and the helmet flings off, drawing blood, but not slaying it. Stuff like that. It's a success, but it's not the killing blow. So there you go. I hope that helps. Let me know if there are questions. When the character dies, you leave the hangout. Now, this might be something that differs from table to table. What is the goal again? To remove distractions from role-playing. The big goal is to remove distractions from the role-playing game. Now, if you have a player at the table, he will be emotional about losing the characters for sure. So, get off the table, take a short walk, helps with gaining perspective of what happened. You know, it might help. Like maybe a player might have an emotional outburst without it and basically ruin the whole evening for everybody. But it's also here to keep the other players and the GM focused on what is happening in the game. You see Carla's body splayed out on the ground, the spear getting pulled out by the goblins standing on top of her corpse, looking over to you, John. You're next! Bam. What a dramatic scene. Do you want that dramatic scene ruined by, well, guess I'm dead, from the player of Carla? I don't think so. I don't want that. Do you want that? If you think about it, maybe. But then you can play the board game way, and that's fine. But it's not for the roleplay. Players must have the character sheets with them always. It's to ensure that you know what your character can do or would do. Like, sure, you might not have perception as a skill, but you know how to look around. Like, you still have eyes, so you will look around, sure, no problem. But if you have history as a skill, then it makes sense that when you walk across a ruin, that I stop by the tree stump overlooking the ruins in front of me and ruminate about the times I've spent in the library. I could swear that I've heard something about the ruins in Lurkwood. You know, and the DM might answer what you know about it, or you might make a roll on history to learn information of what you can recall on in the moment. And if it makes sense that your character knows about it, then just give it to the character. If we are not under time pressure, maybe he does have access to the library, maybe he is literally in the library. Don't even need to roll. He's a learned sage. He knows where to look for that information, if the information is at hand. That is the social contract. And you can read about it in the book. There are many more pages. Let's go back. The practice, social contract, the settings played, the systems used to use it. Right, let's see. Going back to what I've written down, I've seen almost at 30 minutes, so I'm keeping this short. Yes. Yeah, help with misunderstandings. What's the point? For the social contract, you want to stop misunderstandings from happening. This is when you say, we are playing a game about going to hell, like Descent into Awareness that I have on my YouTube channel. We will go to hell. So you should play a character who will accept going to hell to save a city, to save people, as something that their character might do. Now, if we say, hey, we play Descent into Awareness where we go to hell, and you play a character who has no business going there, it's gonna be jarring for the whole time. It's very hard to roleplay with such a player and keep the game going, because every session is going to be jarring, trying to make it fit somehow. Also, the 4D system in chapter 3, it talks about best one to use. That's about I can go back to my face. The systems to use to allow for role playing easily. A big fan of the game. The games recommended would be like Traveler 2nd Edition, which is basically using a skill system. You roll 2d6 to see if you achieve something or not, and the bell curve of a 2d6 makes it less random of whether you succeed or not. If you're average at it, you got a good chance to make it every second time. And we are rolling the dice to see if there's tension and there's a risk of failure, and if the risk of failure affects the story. So keeping the rules light to allow for roleplay to emerge. Yeah, there we go. Let's see. Games that stops role-playing dead in its tracks. Yeah. Definitely. A lot of games are out there that are counter to role-playing. I would say a big one that comes to my mind would be Shadowrun. Try to have combat in Shadowrun. If you fight, okay. One guy attacks 4 times, has 4 turns to do stuff with their cyberware, with their implanted boosters, with drugs used to speed up how they can react. And the other guy only gets 1 turn and has to sit there waiting for 10 minutes until it's his turn again, while we are rolling 25 dice to hit and rolling 12 dice to dodge the hits, and reducing how much damage is taken with armor, and taking into consideration the many different combat moves which you have to remind yourself exist. And then your player pulls out some weird combat maneuver you didn't even think about because it's in one of the books you haven't read for 5 years. And then, of course, you have other systems like hacking, where if you play a decker and you start to hack, you might not even be in the same buildings as the Shadowrunners. You could do it from home. And it's a whole minigame where none of the other players can interact with you. And sometimes you can make it work somewhat if you make rolls for your hacking adventure, and then you switch the scene to the other players and what they're doing. I find it especially thrilling if hacking is done during under tension, while as you trigger the alarm and your team has to shoot down the guards and give you cover to allow you enough time to get the data needed, plug it, download it into his brain, and get the heck out of there. There we go. But we are trying to remove combat turns, we are trying to remove initiative and keep it cinematic. And yes, so 4D role playing, 3D role playing the hard way. To me, it means like being in character and not thinking about the rules. The rules, having them be easy enough that you can react quickly when you are playing in the game. You know, if I want to hack into the cybersecurity system, I plug in, dive onto the grid and see the building, approach it, and make myself look like one of the other 32-bit data slaves, a man in suit with his bag in hand. And you know, the GM looks at you and says, computer, roll a computer check, or your hacking check, whichever one it might be. I don't even know. I don't even care at this point. Just roll your computer 2d6 plus 2 if you're using something like Traveler, because you're very skilled with computers. That might be a way to go about it. 2d6 plus 2. Oh, I rolled 10. Yeah, you're in. And nobody sees you as a threat. So then a small description of what cyberspace looks like, and you can go on. And then the switch between that and what the other characters do. Now, this might be something where you do it alone, but you can still roleplay, you can still interact, there can still be tension. But you keep that short, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the max, before you give the ball back to the other players and give them something to work with. That would be an idea from my end, but it's definitely difficult. So, yeah, pulled in and yanked out. So point, role playing, getting pulled into the world, immersed, like I am on this spaceship, and yanked out that I'm just a floating head with a spaceship background. Be in character, know what your character sees and what is happening around him. You know, how do you react when your friend dies in front of you by the goblins getting pierced by 3 spears? What will you do? Run away in fear? Cover under a rock? Become enraged and yell, revenge, and slay them all? That makes for cool moments. That makes for memories. That creates the story that we all talk about after the game is over and we had time to ruminate on what happened. And I feel definitely very strongly that when the pizza man comes and guys are constantly munching on chips, like myself, I do that too. I've done it many game sessions, but stuff like that interrupts the game flow. It takes you out. So, role playing for role playing's sake. It's not a game to win. If you play an RPG to win, role playing becomes its first victim. Yeah, I do believe that to be true. You can play the game to win, then it's a board game session. Maybe you play to be with your friend, then it's a social encounter, right? You do this to spend time with your friends. But if you want to focus on role play, you can get more out of the table if you take the role playing game to actually role play. And not many role playing games are fit for that. I believe Shadowrun is the worst offender, the one that comes to mind first. Pathfinder, same problems. DSR, the Schwarze Auge, has that problem too, because rules are complicated and people don't have time to remember all of them, and they just want to roleplay in the world. I would say a difficult one would be Warhammer 40k, 40,000. Trying to play in a world where every faction is quite twisted with a lot of detail, and when Space Marines have like what 40 books around Gilliman, nobody has time to read that. You might be able to roleplay with Warhammer 40k nerds, but if you're trying to roleplay in the world, you will end up with a lot of situations of asking the GM about the setting, about is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? When you want to give the players carte blanche to do what they think their character would do, and reduce the barrier to role playing as low as possible. Now, if you can do that, you stay in character. I believe it makes for wonderful sessions. Now, okay, 40 minutes. I'm gonna switch over to another point. That's it. I've uploaded the training session I've had with Rick, 28mm RPG. So let's, if you want to take a look, I'm gonna do this real quick. The example, me doing for the roleplay. I've picked up one scene to give you an example of combat is happening, but I am trying my best to stay in character as much as possible. I've had some notes. Let me help real quick. My name is Fimble, and I'm a fighter in here, and a fighter that is quick on his feet with 2 swords. And with me is Lork, a thief who is cautious and critical. So, and we are going through a dungeon right now. Let's listen in.
On the side of the wall, you can see Lork moving his way down the passageway. Ahead, you note that there is a fog, like a dust fog, ahead. And as his torch moves along, you see slight glimmers in the air. Boop, boop.
Now, I know what this is, but I'm really trying really hard to roleplay as my character, not as myself. Hold on, stop. Don't take a step.
It's about 20 feet ahead, he says. That's strange.
The GM mentioned the distance. We see it with the torchlight. I didn't know how far it was, but now I do.
The fog starts moving another 10 feet.
Now, the GM gave me a moment to interact there, but I was thinking about what to do, so I hesitated basically, and lost that moment. Use the pole. Can you touch it? What is this?
He pulls out, he takes the pole, moves it towards, and he.
We have established, I've established that I brought with me a 10-foot pole, like the old Dungeons and Dragons stories, of course. Get your 10-foot pole to trigger all the traps and not fall into them. Classic. I've had fun with that.
As soon as he moves the pole towards it, it's like some form of the fog comes out, grabs the pole, and starts pulling it in. And he's
Oh
like,
my God.
"Oh no!" He makes a roll to check. He manages to pull the pole back as it goes skloop, and suddenly the fog moves ahead another 10 feet in front of him, and he
move back.
goes,
We're moving out of
and
here.
he starts
Come
walking back. He's like, I'm not sure what that is. He runs around.
It's weird, man. What the fuck? A fog that sucks and pulls.
Around the corner. Once again, he runs.
yeah, let's stop it here. You can watch the training session if you want on the channel with 28mm RPG. So obviously, as a veteran role player, the description sounded very much like a gelatinous cube. As soon as the pole got stuck, I had my suspicion confirmed, but I don't know that. And it was very exciting playing it out, like being a new adventurer. Like, I've trained for this for 2 months. I've always wanted to go adventuring. We heard about this dungeon to make some quick money. We found some dead bodies. And as soon as danger happens, that I can explain, like, holy shit, what is happening here? Freaking out and running away, but it felt proper. Now, 2D role playing would be right. The creature comes, and you prod it with the pole, and we roll initiative, and now it would all be slowed down, and we would be like, and you would put the mini down that looks like a gelatinous cube, and now players will have much more meta knowledge of, like, oh, that's what he meant, but they can't act upon it, but they will be distracted, right? Those informations, setting down the battle map and the creature, will distract you from role playing and staying in character, because now you're thinking of how to win the combat against the gelatinous cube. I slice it with a sword. But if you're there, would you really do that? Like, in my situation, I thought about it. I thought about attacking with the sword, but ended up not doing it because it looked unreasonable to me. Like, no, what is a sword supposed to do to this weird mass that sucks in the pole or tries to? It makes no sense. So that is very similar to the feeling of the world is real and it behaves to its own sets of laws, and we respect the laws and use them to and yeah, we use them to be like, yeah, we are in this world. There's this weird thing here happening, and the session went on. Later on, I've shot a bow, and the and I hit it with the arrow, but it sunk in, floating, and then the cube came closer, flopping around by 90 degrees, and we saw the arrow turn inside of it. So we realized it's some weird of. I mean, we could literally call it gelatinous cube because it makes sense to call it that thing. Like a weird slime cube might also work. And yeah, we tried out some tactics, but you can check it out on the channel. All right, so that's it to how to roleplay the hard way. The inspiration for the role playing. I'll put the link in the description. And yeah, 48 minutes is more than long enough, so I'm gonna cut it here. See ya later, guys. Goodbye.